How did it come to this? A wheelbarrow of cash for a single loaf of bread. $100 trillion bill, worth nothing. Prices doubling overnight. It looks insane. But the exact same thing is happening to you right now, just slower. For the last 100 years, a quiet thief has been draining your wealth. And it has already stolen 96% of your money's value. The number in your bank account never dropped by a single cent. So what exactly got stolen? We're here to ask the simple question behind everything worth anything. Why money? So let's name this thief. It's called inflation, and almost everyone pictures it backwards. We say prices are going up, and that's true. But that picture hides what's really happening underneath. The price of bread didn't rise because the bread suddenly got more valuable. It rose because your money got less valuable. Same event, just flipped around. So this isn't a story about prices climbing. It's a story about money falling. And if your money is quietly falling, the next question writes itself. How far and how fast? And this fall is not small. It just happens slowly enough that you stop noticing. Take the US dollar. $1 in 1913, the year the Federal Reserve was born, would buy what takes about $34 today. Flip that around, and the dollar has lost more than 96% of its buying power in a single lifetime. A dollar from back then buys about 3 cents now. Picture a melting ice cube. Each year, a thin layer drips away. In any one year, you barely notice. But stack the years up, and most of the cube is simply gone. That's the quiet part. Inflation doesn't arrive as a crash. It arrives as a slow leak. So slow we just call it normal. So why does money fall in the first place? The oldest answer is also the simplest. Too much money, chasing too few goods. Imagine a tiny island with 10 people on it. Between them, they have 10 gold coins. And on the whole island, there are exactly 10 apples for sale. 10 coins, 10 apples. So an apple naturally settles at about 1 coin. Fair enough. Now, overnight, a magician sneaks in and doubles every coin. Everyone wakes up with twice as much money. They feel rich, but here's the trap. There are still only 10 apples, the very same apples. So what happens when twice as much money goes chasing the exact same fruit? The apples don't multiply, the price does. With 20 coins and 10 apples, each apple now costs about 2 coins instead of 1. Nothing about the apple changed. The only thing that changed was how much money was floating around to chase it. And look what happened to each coin. Before, 1 coin bought 1/10 of all the apples on the island. After the doubling, that same coin buys only 1/20. Every coin got watered down. This is the heart of it. When you create more money without creating more real stuff, you don't make everyone richer. You just dilute every unit that already exists, including the one sitting in your pocket. That is inflation, stripped to the bone. Now, in the real world, inflation doesn't only come from a magician doubling coins. It runs on 2 engines. The first is the one we just saw. Too many buyers with too much money, all reaching for the same limited goods. Economists call it demand pull. Picture a summer when everyone wants the same concert tickets. Too many hands, not enough seats, and the price climbs. The second engine works from the other side. Sometimes the things needed to make stuff get more expensive. Oil jumps. Wages rise. A harvest fails. The cost of producing almost everything goes up, so sellers raise prices just to survive. That's cost push. Most real inflation is a blend of the two. Demand pulling from above, cost pushing from below at the same time. And here's where it starts to feed on itself. When prices rise, workers feel it, and they ask for higher pay just to keep up, which is only fair. But wages are a cost too, so when pay goes up, businesses raise their prices again to cover it. Higher prices, then higher wages, then higher prices, each one chasing the other in a circle. Economists call it the wage-price spiral. Think of it as a treadmill that slowly speeds up. Everyone running faster just to stay in the same place. Once it's spinning, it's hard to stop because nobody wants to be the one who falls behind. And that's one big reason inflation, once it really takes hold, is so stubborn to bring back down. But all of this raises an obvious question. If extra money dilutes everything, who is making the extra money? Here's the part that surprises people. Most money today isn't printed at all. It's created, typed into existence, when banks make loans and when central banks add to the supply. There is no magician on an island. There's a system, and that system can grow the money supply faster than the economy grows real goods. When it does, you get the island problem at the scale of a whole country. This is the pattern economists have watched for a century. Over the long run, when the money in an economy races ahead of the stuff that money can buy, the price level follows the money up. More money, same shelves, higher prices. Now we reach the part that feels almost unfair. Inflation isn't just a side effect. It quietly moves wealth from one group to another, and most people never feel it happen. Think about who holds cash and who holds debt. If your savings sit in money, inflation slowly eats them. The number stays the same, the buying power leaks away. You got poorer, and nobody ever taxed you on paper. But think about someone who owes money, a borrower with a big fixed loan. For them, inflation is a gift. They borrowed strong dollars and pay back weaker ones. The debt stays the same size while everything around it gets pricier, so the loan feels lighter every year. And the biggest borrower of all? In almost every country, it's the government itself. If you're enjoying this, a quick subscribe means you won't miss the next one. Now, back to it. So far, we've talked about the slow leak, a few percent a year. But what happens when the leak becomes a flood? When a government, usually to pay its debts, prints money faster and faster, the dilution stops being gentle. It turns into a spiral. People see prices rising, so they rush to spend before their money gets worse, which pushes prices up even faster, which makes them spend even sooner. The money is dying in real time, and everyone can feel it in their hands. This is hyperinflation, the runaway version of the exact same machine we built on the island. Same physics, just with the brakes cut. And history has watched it happen more than once, with consequences that redrew the map of the world. Picture Germany, 1923. After losing the First World War, the government printed money to cover its debts, and the spiral took hold. At the peak, prices doubled every few days. Workers were paid twice a day, and ran to spend before lunch cost more than breakfast. People carried wages home in wheelbarrows, and a wheelbarrow of cash couldn't buy a loaf of bread. By late that year, a single dollar was worth trillions of German marks. Now jump to Zimbabwe, 2008. The government printed one banknote worth $100 trillion. One note, $100 trillion. And it still couldn't buy a week of groceries. These aren't different diseases. They're the island with the brakes cut. Too much money, far too few goods, taken to the edge. There's one more engine, and it's the strangest of all, because it runs on nothing but belief. Inflation partly happens because people expect it to happen. If a shop owner is sure that next year everything will cost more, she raises her prices now to stay ahead. If workers are sure prices will climb, they demand bigger raises now. If everyone believes money will be worth less tomorrow, they all act today in the exact ways that make it come true. The expectation creates the reality. This is why central banks are almost obsessed with one thing: keeping expectations anchored. They don't just fight inflation, they fight the belief in it. Because once people stop trusting that money will hold its value, the spiral can light itself out of pure expectation. Which leads to a strange question. If inflation steals from savers and the runaway version can wreck a whole country, why don't central banks aim for zero? Why not stop the leak completely? Here's the surprise. Most central banks deliberately aim for a little inflation, usually around 2% a year. They want the ice cube to melt, just very, very slowly. And there's a reason. The thing they fear more than slow inflation is its opposite: falling prices. When prices fall, people stop spending, because waiting means it's cheaper tomorrow. Businesses earn less, cut jobs, and the economy can freeze into a downward spiral of its own. A small, steady inflation works like a cushion. So 2% isn't a failure. It's a target, a controlled burn, chosen on purpose. You may have noticed something. The official inflation number on the news often feels too low, like it doesn't match your life. There's a real reason for that. That headline number is an average, measured across a giant basket of thousands of things. Everything from milk to televisions to haircuts. But you don't buy the average. You buy your basket. And if the things you can't avoid, rent, groceries, fuel, are rising faster than gadgets and gizmos, then your personal inflation runs hotter than the headline. A cheaper television doesn't help much when the rent just jumped. So the number isn't lying exactly. It's just describing a typical life that may be nothing like yours. The inflation you feel is real. It's simply your basket, not theirs. So what does all of this mean for you right now? Start with your paycheck. Say you get a 3% raise and you feel a little richer. But if prices rose 3% that same year, you can buy exactly what you could before. You didn't get a raise. You got to stand still. Now look at your savings. $100 tucked under a mattress back in 1990 has quietly lost more than half of what it could once buy. Just sitting there, doing nothing. And doing nothing is a choice that inflation charges you for. That's why almost nobody keeps their life savings as plain cash. They're not being greedy. They're running from the leak, trying to hold their money in things that rise with prices instead of melting underneath them. So step back and look at what we found. Inflation isn't a glitch in the system. It's a feature of this kind of money. Remember, our money used to be tied to gold, a metal nobody can simply print. Back then, governments couldn't easily make more, so prices stayed roughly flat for centuries at a stretch. But we gave that up. Today's money isn't backed by metal. It's backed by trust. Trust that the people running it won't make too much. And that's the bargain. A money made of trust can flex. It can fight a crisis, cushion a recession, keep an economy moving when metal would have frozen it solid. But it can also be diluted, slowly by design, or catastrophically by mistake. Inflation is simply the cost of that freedom. It's the price we pay for a money made of trust instead of metal. So let's return to our thief. Now you can see the truth. There was never a break-in. The money in your account didn't shrink. The world around it grew more expensive because there was always a little more money chasing the same goods. The thief is just the system, working exactly as designed. A slow, deliberate melt aimed at 2% that now and then runs wild. You can't lock your door against it. You can only understand it. But this leaves one enormous question hanging. If a money tied to gold couldn't be inflated away like this, then why did the whole world walk away from it? So here is the next question. Why did we abandon the gold standard? If you like this one, hit like and subscribe. Got a topic you want us to decode? Drop it in the comments. We're here to answer the simple question behind everything. Why money?